My name is Jason Byrne. I'm sitting with Justice James E.C. Perry at the Bradlee-McIntyre House. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Really honored to have you. Just for disclosure, we plan to publish this interview on our YouTube channel, on social media, our website, and we may also share it with other local historic societies and potentially the library as well. Is that okay?
Not a problem.
All right, sir. I want to hear about your growing up in North Carolina. I believe you were born in 1944 in New Bern, North Carolina.
New Bern, yes.
And so what was your life like there?
It was actually, to me, it was good. Growing up, we had a neighborhood, we lived in the projects, which was a new thing then. It was like townhouses, and everybody couldn't live in the project. You couldn't have a record, anything of that nature. They were very highly scrutinized. The teachers lived there, and it was rather peaceful. It was for all black, of course, in 1944. Very, very segregated. It was like apartheid, but you didn't really know it because you didn't get to see the other side.
Right. Yeah, I know you've described it like that many times. So what do you mean by apartheid? I know just the nature of everything being separate in separate communities that didn't interact?
Everything was separate. Water was separate, bus stations, schools were separate, books were separate, chairs were separate. I mean, it was just complete separation of the races. The only white person we saw would be, we called it the blanket man, the guy that would come in with blankets and irons in the trunk of his car, I was telling them, or the insurance man. He would come in every week to collect insurance. And that was basically it. Growing up, of course, when I got into my high school years, I matriculated different places, different times. Of course, I did a lot of demonstrations too. So we were able to ride the bus to school, city bus.
And that wasn't well received?
Oh no, that was fine.
It was fine.
I mean, the bus went to the school. I mean,
okay.
I never had a problem with the buses. It was, by the time we got to my neighborhood, it was all black anyway.
Okay. I know you described the schools as separate but not equal. Can you tell me what you meant by the school system you went to?
Well, not having gone to the other school, I'm speaking basically about the structure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was $1 million school, and our school was a $500,000 school.
Mm-hmm.
The level of instruction, I mean, I don't think theirs were any better than, might have been worse than ours, because we had the best teachers available. A lot of them had advanced degrees and etc. And at the time, I mean, it was only one school in the city, so everybody attended the same school, including the teachers' children.
Mm-hmm. So
they had a vested interest in their children learning, and my father had a first grade education, my mother a third, and so therefore I was thrown in the first upper tier because my mother took me to a woman who, a babysitter that had about 12 kids.
Miss Hattie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she would teach us. So by the time I got to kindergarten, I should have been in first grade. So that's how I got into upper tier, and I stayed in upper tier throughout.
So you started kindergarten already knowing how to read, is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
the
pretty
ABC
amazing
thing they were doing, I mean, that was,
yeah.
We could spell round. I mean, it was just,
yeah.
It was kind of like a head start.
Mm-hmm.
But I should have been skipped to the second grade, but because of my parents' background, I wasn't. But had my parents been professionals, preachers, teachers, lawyers, I would have gone to second grade. So
your mother, if I'm getting this right, correct me if I'm wrong, but your mother cleaned house and your father worked in a factory, is that right?
My mother worked in a hotel. She worked in a hospital, but she did cleaning work. I mean, and as a matter of fact, before I was born, she used to go to New York, to New Rochelle, and work there. And she was stayed in the house, stayed with the family. Mm-hmm. And I did some checking, and she was listening to census as a domestic.
Okay. Given their, they, as you mentioned, they didn't have a higher education, but what kind of expectations did they have for you?
Oh, well, the expectation was definitely to graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I was the first college graduate in my family. My father was a lathe operator in a plywood factory. He was a foreman.
Mm-hmm.
And although he had first grade education, his mother was a teacher. She might have homeschooled him because he wrote a book of poetry and etc. He was quite literate. My father was almost a genius. He would make things with his hands, wood, etc. He taught himself to play the piano, the organ. I mean, he was a Renaissance man, given his background. I just can't imagine what would have happened had he been
given the opportunity.
Yeah, been born at a different time.
Right. And tell me about his poetry.
His poetry was, he published a book of poetry called The Gospel in Poetry in 1951. He had about 100 poems in there. It was couched in biblical terms. He relied on the Bible a lot, but it was really a book of philosophy. He utilized the Bible to strike out against racism, denomination, separation, whether there's a black heaven or white heaven. I mean, things of that nature. He also talked about colorism in the black community. We had colorism. You're aware of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my father was my grandmother was a mulatto. His mother was a mulatto, and he was in that same ilk.
So he was a little bit lighter skinned?
Oh, a little bit like he was, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But he was very, very intelligent.
Now, did you know he wrote poetry all along, or was that kind of a surprise to you later?
Oh, did I know it? I mean, I knew he would come on. I mean, I was 51. I had to be, 7? He would write things in a notebook. Matter of fact, I still have a notebook that where he wrote the original poems in it. And he had it. It was self-published. Borrowed $50 from my uncle, my mother's brother, to publish it. And I republished it when I was a judge.
Okay.
And I didn't change anything except the structure, but the words and etc. were his. I still have a copy.
Let's dive into that colorism a little bit and talk about your grandmother. What does that mean for folks who might not know what you mean by that?
Well, my grandmother didn't like dark people. I guess she thought improving the race meant the whiter you got, the more you improved the race. She was into assimilation, and the closer you got to it, the better you are. So she didn't want, well, I guess she figured that was the closest thing to being white. I mean, it was really an inferiority complex, but she wasn't. She didn't have that, but she never stated that, but that's what I was able to surmise after a period of time.
She almost wanted to erase that identity to kind of...
Matter of fact, she had a sister who passed for white.
Okay.
In Philadelphia. I never saw her, but apparently my grandmother would go to Philadelphia and visit her now and then. I understand she would come down south to New Bern every 5 years to visit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And my father called his, he was raised by his grandfather, and my father called him Mr. Johnson. He called his grandfather Mr. Johnson. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Huh. Very formal. And your mother, I understand, was very loving, nurturing.
Oh, absolutely.
And she lived with you for a lot of years.
Oh, yes. I promised her if I ever made any accomplishments in life while I was in high school that I would take her out of the project. And I did finally, after many years, after college, after OCS, after law school, after getting married, and she spent the last about 35 years of life with us. And it was it endured to our benefit, although we didn't planned it that way. We had three generations in the house.
Wow. Okay.
So that allowed for my kids, knew her, and they were their daughter, and she would take them to trips to New York and etc.
Okay.
And my wife was able to get a PhD at the University of Florida because my mother would stay there in Pinch Hit while she was in the classes. She would come back on the weekend, on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and go back, and she was able to finish in a year or so.
Okay. Couple more questions about your family, and then I'll move on to kind of the next phase in your life. But I'm curious about brothers and sisters.
I had one brother and one sister. They were both older. My brother was 9 years older than I, and my sister was 11. They were 2 years difference in them. Apparently, my mother had a lot of miscarriages, and that was a surprise. I was 40 when she was 40 when I was born. So you know what they say during that time. You're either going to be I won't say that.
Say what you want.
Well, normally kids born to mothers in late ages have mental issues.
Okay, I got you.
So I was going to be either that or the opposite.
Gotcha.
Side of the continuum.
Okay. The other family member I want to ask you about is your Uncle Seth.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about him.
He was my role model. I loved him dearly. He had a car, and he would take us places. He would come to pick us up, take us to church, and take us out of town, and etc. He was always the backbone of the family. My daddy was doing other things. I loved him so much that I named my daughter after him, Camille Lucette. I went up to, he was sick. I didn't know the extent of it. And I went to New Bern, and he died while I was there. So I figured.
Honor him.
My wife was pregnant with Camille, so I said, okay, this is a memorial for him.
Very nice. Okay. And so he inspired you. I mean, I know he was involved in NAACP.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I didn't realize he never talked about that.
Okay.
I had two uncles that were involved in NAACP. My Uncle Seth had a cross burn on his yard with the Brown versus Board of Education. They never let me know anything about that. I mean, it was, I guess it was to try to protect our psychic, but they never talked about it. And I found out years later when I was an adult.
Okay. So you were a big guy when you were in school, and that brought you into athletics, which led to kind of a surprise where you were going to join the military, but you ended up getting an athletic scholarship. Is that right?
Well, actually, you can call it athletic scholarship. It was really work aid. It was National Defense Student Loan, and ironically, no one in my school, counselors, the teachers mentioned the possibility of my going to college. And other kids went, and I asked them, well, but how did you find out? They said, well, Miss So-and-so told me, or Mr. So-and-so. I said, okay. So at one point I was a little perturbed with them, with the thought of them not mentioning it, because I was in the upper tier and had grades in it. We had numerical grades in the 90s and 95s, and I was voted most versatile, the best all around in my class, because of the athletics, academics, and etc. And of course, about 30 days, so I planned to join the Army or the Air Force or something to get an education that way, because I knew my family didn't have the money. But they gave me the nurturing, the love, everything I needed in terms of self-concept and etc.
But you never knew that was a possibility for you, like never really occurred to you before that point?
No.
Yeah.
30 days before I graduated, the coach came down from St. Augustine College at the time and offered 3 of us, and none of us had any idea of that. They came and talked with the coach, and he called us down to his office at the school, high school, and he offered us work aid and National Defense Student Loan, which meant that, you know what that means, right? This kind of stuff. And we went up, and the three of us all graduated, all have advanced degrees. And the ones who were favored, and normally, I mean, I guess part of the colorism is that there was a class system, and the ones in the so-called upper class of the black, some of them made it, some didn't. But we were in the lower class, we all made it. We didn't know we were in the lower class because.
And you were an accounting major, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Business administration and accounting.
Shift gears a little bit. I'm curious, when did you get involved in the kind of activism moment? I know I read that your first kind of experience with it was the mock funeral of Jim Crow.
Oh, well, we lived in the project, right? And there was a church, Star Zion, right down the street from us. And there was a sidewalk from Miller Street that went right past our house. So the march started at the church. It was the Brown versus Bully education decision. So I simply followed that into we called it the big field, where they had a bonfire, and they had a simulated casket that supposedly contained Jim Crow. And they burned it. And they thought Jim Crow was dead, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
So I attended that. That was my first demonstration, I guess. And all through high school, we had sit-in demonstrations for department stores that didn't serve blacks. At a counter, lunch counter, you can go in and buy things, but you couldn't try anything on. And they had lunch, Crest had a lunch counter, and you just couldn't, we knew better than to sit in. So the demonstrations, we had, during the same time that the action took place in Greensboro, we had the same thing in high school in New York.
Sit-ins.
And we marched, and we had the preachers were the leaders and the mentors, and they taught us nonviolent, how not to react and how to react, and etc. And we go and sit in, and they would serve us. And we'd go the next day with the same thing. So I said, well, suppose they serve us, we don't have any money. So they gave us all $1 each in case they served us.
But never happened.
So we could keep the money.
I go back to the Jim Crow moment where, it seemed like everybody at that point, did people really believe like, hey, this is behind us, this is a new dawn, like Jim Crow era's over with? Was that the belief?
Well, I guess during that time, they did away with separate but equal.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there were unintended consequences there because we had the best education possible. We had stores and etc. And I guess they thought if they assimilated, it's supposed to have been a melting pot, but obviously not a melting pot. Well, it's like a salad bowl. And so they thought that would make things better. But then they had the segregation academies where the upper class whites went to, well, actually, I never saw an integrated school. They didn't really integrate the schools until because of all deliberate speed until about 68, 69. And, but they had the segregation academies after that. And when they finally integrated, my school, J.T. Barber, became an elementary school. And the principal of J.T. Barber became the principal of the New Bern High. And that was a little different. New Bern had a little different history than most of the South. And they took the best teachers over there. A lot of things were named after teachers, coaches, and etc. I never had the chance to attend one.
Yeah, so the communities, in some extent, lost their identities. I know the schools are often like the center of community life.
During my period, there was no lost identity because it was
still separate.
It was still segregated.
Yeah.
Although the law said it, but the most smartest people were the Southern lawmakers, whether at the state, local level, they could get around all deliberate speed. Okay, that means what?
Slow as they want to go.
Precisely.
Yeah. So I know that you talk about the sit-ins and things like that. Did you ever meet Mr. King, Dr. King?
I was in his presence.
Okay.
I was probably in the 9th grade. We came to New Bern, and we came to this church to speak. I think it was Giffield Church, and the church was packed. And he was, trying to encourage us to be activists and etc. And the one thing I remember, he said, you need to determine whether you're going to be a thermometer or a thermostat. He said the thermometer measures the temperature, the thermostat regulates it. And I remember that. So that was the first time. And then I marched with King. It was not in college, but the year after that, I graduated because that summer, and King came to Raleigh. I think probably in September, and I marched with him then. Did I ever meet him personally? No. I was in his presence.
In his presence.
And I heard him speak many times.
And obviously that impacted you a great deal.
Of course.
I know another unfortunate event in Dr. King's life also impacted you, which was his assassination.
Oh yeah.
So tell me what that did. Yeah.
Well, I was the first lieutenant in the Army, stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I was due to make captain, and I was drafted, of course, and I decided to attend officer candidate school because I wanted to have some control of my life. Vietnam was hot, and I figured I wouldn't want some idiot to tell me to, go in the woods and kill somebody and get killed. So I thought I would have some control over my life, and so I went to officer candidate school, and got a commission as a second lieutenant. Went back to Fort Dix, had base training at Fort Dix. Everything was at Fort Dix in New Jersey, and the night King was killed, I was on my way home from work, and I heard the radio. Dr. King's been shot. He didn't know whether he'd been killed, dead or not. And they said, who will lead them now? I said, it was King was killed, Whitney Young, and names went through the litany of black leaders. And I said, They said that was the officer, gentleman, and leader. Perhaps I could go back to the South to participate in some of the things that he tried to remedy. But I figured I needed credibility. So I decided that night to attend law school for credibility because 2/3 of the legislators, national legislators, were lawyers and et cetera, and most of our leaders were preachers. So I figured with that credibility, I could kind of pierce that veil between the clergy, the secular, and the spiritual. And so I decided that night to attend law school. And when I went back to work the next day, I told people I was going to law school. They said, well, have you applied? I said, no. Taking the LSAT? I said, no. So you shouldn't tell people you're going to law school until you have your ducks lined up. So, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I remember at his funeral, I was sitting in the day room. The day room is kind of room for the officers, rec room, I guess you would call it. There's a pool table, television, etc. And I was watching his funeral solemnly, and 2 of the white officers came in and started shooting pool. And I thought that was so disrespectful. But you have to remember during that time, Dr. King was considered a pariah in the nation. He was not real liked and revered as he is today. They call him Dr. Martin Luther King, and people celebrated his death. And yeah, that was the fact of life.
Which is wild because today people look at him on
same way to look at Malcolm X.
Yeah.
But then he was hated.
Okay.
And so it wasn't unusual for a white person not to give reverence to his funeral or to his passing. Matter of fact, some probably celebrated.
But it inspired you, and you wound up in New York, going to Columbia.
Yes, I decided, and I applied to. There was a classmate of mine who was a second-year student at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, And I didn't know anything about the law. I didn't know the lawyers. I just said I'm going to law school. And so I applied to case western reserve. I said if they accept him, they have to accept me because I was a much better student than he was. And they did. Mm-hmm. And they gave me half a scholarship. And I was going to case in Cleveland. Didn't know anything about law. And one of my fellow junior officers said there was a junior officer here from Mississippi. His name is Tom Long. He's a second-year student at Columbia. I understand he was a major at Fort Dix. And they said, go and talk to him. So I made contact with him and sitting in his room and drove up 90 miles to New York, sitting in his room and started telling him about law school. And he said, what'd you make on? So I told him my story of where I was going, etc. He said, what'd you make on your LSAT? I told him. He said, did you apply to Columbia? I said, no. He said, man, you go any place you want to go. So I said, you're kidding. So he handed me an application, and I filled it out, and 2 or 3 weeks later, I was accepted.
There you go. And that's where you met your wife, is that right?
Actually, no, I did not meet her in law school, but I met her. A lot of the junior officers got out of the Army at the same time. They either came to New York for grad school or job or etc. So we used to get together on the weekends. And she was the sister-in-law of one of the junior officers that came from Fort Dix, New York. He was in school of social work. So, as a matter of fact, he was married to her sister.
Okay.
So we had this party, and he said, "Man, I want you to meet my sister-in-law." And I met her at the party, and that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm. I was reading about your smooth lines. You tried to give her about what EC stood for. I thought that was funny.
Everybody wants to know what EC stands for. It sounds like such a aristocratic name, James E.C. Perry, but it's just my uncle. The name of my uncle Seth Clark. His middle name was Clark, and when he died, before he died, my mother named after him. Then there was a woman called Edwards, who said that if you name your son after me, he won't want for anything. And the last I heard of that, so that's where the Edwards came from.
But you told her it was extra cool. Is that what you said?
Edwards comment, extra cool. I mean, this all kind of acronym.
You were smooth back then. So, what made you decide to go back to the South after, seeing all this racism? You said, I want to go be a part of a change agent down there. Is that what it was? Yeah.
I mean, obviously, at Columbia, everybody expected to go to Wall Street to work on Wall Street because it's a corporate school. And the dean called me up and said, Mr. Perry said, "No, you haven't gone for an interview for Wall Street." I said, "Well, I didn't come here to work on Wall Street. I came here to go back to the South to try to make a difference." And that was just my goal. That's where the action was in the South in terms of civil rights. And I thought that if there were a place of the future, the South would be it, because a lot of their actions were based on ignorance, really. And I thought education, etc. But I didn't realize that at the time that racism was sort of baked into the very founding of this nation.
Yeah. And that systemic racism attempted to, keep you out of the bar and keep you out of the kind of the inner circles of power, right?
Well, none of the South wanted any blacks to be lawyers. As a matter of fact, and the whites who represented blacks were ostracized, or they were threatened. They pulled out.
Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. I can pause now.
Okay, where do we start?
So we were talking about the powers that be that wanted to keep you, tried to keep folks of color out of the bars.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, my plan was, I'd never been south of North Carolina, so my plan was to move back to North Carolina to practice. So I applied a year before I graduated, thinking that was time, because in New York you had to apply 9 months before you graduated to take the bar. So I figured I'd apply a year in advance. And I did, and during my spring break of my last year, my wife and I drove down to Charlotte, and we were told that you have to wait 27 months to take the bar exam because you have to apply in your first year of law school in order to take the bar 3 years later. I said, oh my goodness. So he said, South Carolina doesn't have such a rule. So we drove down to South Carolina, the same day, South Carolina. Got to South Carolina. Well, I was originally Hebrew Smith fellow. I had a fellowship, a stipend for 2 years that paid me like $13,000 a year. So I could go wherever I wanted to go. So I went down to Greenville. And they said, well, we don't have such a rule. I said, but we haven't passed the black in 7 years. And they had a rule that if you failed the exam 3 times, you had to go back and get a master's. And most blacks had taken it twice, afraid to take it the 3rd time, afraid to sue. So got in our car, and that was about 2 o'clock. Drove down to Atlanta. I think it was 85 or 75, right to Atlanta. Never been there, didn't know anybody there. But I knew Manny Jackson was the vice mayor of Atlanta. He had a 7-person law firm, and knocked on his door and about 4:30, and he gave us an audience for an hour. And we told him the story about South Carolina and North Carolina. So Georgia doesn't have such a rule. So we normally pass 3 blacks a year. When they graduate from Emory, when they graduate from University of Georgia, and one other. I said, good, that's me, right? So he said, well, why don't you move to Atlanta? I said, well, I don't like Atlanta because this traffic reminds me of New York, and it's impossible. So he had a map on his wall and said, these are the places you can go. And I picked Augusta, Georgia, because that was 120 miles via interstate from Atlanta. It was right on the border of South Carolina, which was closer to North Carolina. I mean, a lot of strategy went into that, right? And that's kind of how that happened. And so bought a house and GI Bill, went back to finish in May. U-Haul truck, furniture, car and tow, drove down to Augusta. We told the realtor we don't want to live in the all-white neighborhood. We don't want to be blockbusters. So in the black community, people don't move a lot. So I told them we wanted a 4-bedroom, 2-car garage, 6 heat and air house. So that wouldn't be found in that community. So he coalesced with a white realtor that I'm jumping around, but let me finish this first. And he found a place in Martinez, which is right across the line from county line, Richmond County and Columbia County. It's kind of like Seminole County is Orlando, and it was a new subdivision. And we said we picked a house that hadn't been finished. Adrian was able to pick the colors and et cetera, et cetera. So go back to New York, graduate, come back, go to the University of Georgia, take a bar review course, me and 50 other blacks, and about 700 whites. And we were there for about 2 weeks. Sat for the Georgia bar in May of '72. That was the first year of the multi-state exam. And I got my results back and I failed. I used to failing, right? But I did. So you lament for a minute and then you try to figure, well, what 3 passed? So after about a week of lamenting and calling around to see who passed, nobody passed. I didn't went to the University of Georgia and one that went to a graduate from Emory. So I had classes under Jack Greenberg, who was the director of the Legal Defense Fund. He also was a participant in the Brown versus Board of Education case, along with Thurgood Marshall and one of my other professors, Black Jack Weinstein. And I'll tell you about that a little later. And so I called him and he sent Elaine Jones down today, co-coalesced with ACLU, and filed a lawsuit. I had a meeting of 50 blacks in Atlanta, and they were afraid to join in the lawsuit. I can only get 15 of the 50 to join in, because they said you can be blackballed forever. I said, well, like a cop without a hammer. I mean, if I'm not willing to defend myself, how would anybody think that I would be willing to defend them? So we had to do mitigation. The suit was filed in November of '72 in the Northern District Federal Court in Atlanta. We had to mitigate the damages, so we had to take the bar exam again in February. February to pass 11 of the 15 plaintiffs, including me, and 13 others. And at the time, there were 42 black attorneys in the whole state of Georgia. Most of them were in Atlanta. That made it past 24 more blacks, so we doubled the size of the bar in 1 year. And the lawsuit went up to the Supreme Court. It was dismissed because, I mean, we had a very creative way. We filed it under Title VII, but we weren't employees. But it prevented us from getting a job. So, and they said no. But by that time, it didn't really matter.
Okay.
So, the realtor, going back.
Augusta.
Yeah, in Augusta, when we got there, they said it's going to be integrated because Fort Gordon was there. There were 20 black principals. There was University of Georgia Medical School, and Payne was there. So we thought it would be a good congenial community further for activism. And we didn't know that the year before that, with the biggest riot and killing in the South took place in Augusta. And people were basically, very afraid, and they were timid. So the whites there said that the NAACP paid our mortgage. I said, I wish they did. But
so you were not welcome into the community that you moved, the neighborhood that you moved into.
Well, let's put it like this. Nobody spoke to us except our immediate next door neighbor. I mean, having come from New York, people don't speak anyway, so that wasn't a problem.
How long were you in Augusta before you decided to move to Sanford?
So we passed the bar in '73. Not long, I think. Probably about no more than a year.
Okay. And so you came to Sanford and you were working with an economic development?
No, actually, I
Okay.
didn't come to Sanford.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to take another bar exam. So Florida didn't have reciprocity. So I was going to move to D.C., which was a federal bar. You'd have to take another bar exam. While I was in D.C., we were having dinner at a place called Gaucho's. Me and a friend of mine, we met the guy and another friend, and this guy happened to be Horace Orr, who was from Seminole County. He was director of the CECO, Economic Development Corporation. He said he was looking for a vice president. He said, what about you? He said, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're an ex-Army officer, you'd be perfect. I said, no, I have no intention to move to Florida because the morning I don't want to take another bar exam. And so I said, if I find anybody interested, I'll give them your card. We were eating, having libations, and looked out the window and saw it was snowing. And so, it's okay, we'll come down and look at Florida because I hate snow, right? So that's how that decision was made. So I said, I'll give you a 2-year commitment, but I need to take the bar first. He said, you have to know somebody in order to pass the bar in Florida. I said, you know anybody? He said, no. Oh boy, here we go again. So, applied for the Florida bar. The applications, long application. One of the questions was, you ever involved in the lawsuit? Yes. plaintiff or defendant plaintiff send pertinent documents up, everything, sue the Georgia bar, send it in, and pass the Florida bar the first time.
They didn't want to do that.
So that's how I got to Florida.
Yeah.
Came down, it was like just before Christmas, and it was cold every other place here. People were in shorts and flip-flops, and they had an office party, and people wearing shorts, and so it's not that bad. But they didn't tell me about the mosquitoes and the lizards, and so anyway, that's how we got to Florida.
Now, at that point, did you live in Sanford, or you didn't live in Longwood for a few more years? Is that right?
Well, actually, I rented a room in Sanford.
Okay.
Until we bought the house in Altamont Springs.
Okay.
The family didn't move down until I purchased the house. So it was temporary living in Sanford.
Okay.
So I mean, not really. I there for 2 or 3 months.
But you said you moved to Longwood. You bought your house
to Altamont Springs.
and then you moved to Longwood in '78. You said.
We built the house
Yeah,
in
78.
78.
So what was Seminole County like? Again, your position in the Economic Development Corporation. What did you see when you got here? What was the life like?
Oh man, when I got here, I mean, I saw Midway. That's the first thing I saw. I said, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Then I saw Sanford when it rained, in terms of the black community. I saw Lake Monroe, because that's who we served. We served in Poplar's area. So, which was part of my mission anyway, trying to make a difference. There were some whites who were on the board, were represented by Stencil Davis and McIntosh, Joe Davis. You know him?
No.
He was a senator. He practiced with that group. So they were, sort of helpful, but they were making money off of it too. So I decided that the HBO program came out. HMO, I'm sorry, Health Maintenance Organization. And I became interested in that because a lot of the people in that community were underserved medically. And you know what HMO does, right? During that time, they called it communism. And we weren't going to practice. I mean, we weren't doctors, so it was really been set up for the doctors to participate in. And with the idea that they would be paid to keep people well as opposed to paid to get treated when they're sick.
Right.
And that brought on retaliation against the organization. And that it was, you're talking about lies. They told lies and etc. and brought in the federal Inspector General, and he stayed for a year or two, and that just their presence did a lot to just. Then Ronald Reagan became president, and he ended the program. Ironically, the primary doctor who opposed the HMO, who was the president of Seminole County Medical Society, started an HMO for himself and his group.
Wow. So you saw almost the way you describe it, third world kind of conditions
yes. I mean,
flooding in shacks, and
it was horrendous. I'd never seen anything like that
in Midway.
Midway was just I couldn't believe it. I mean, and it was just this inhumane treatment.
Yeah. I think there's a lot the same in East Altamont and a lot of the other communities as well.
Yes, well, the communities we served was East Altamont, Lake Monroe, Georgetown, Goldsboro, and Oviedo.
Okay.
So we had, the board was comprised of members from those areas.
Okay.
So that was basically service area.
So then you went into your own, you had to practice Perry and Hicks, and I saw a quote that your philosophy was tear the system down, and that guided your work. Is that right?
I don't remember that, but I could have said it.
So what was it when you went into
the system was obviously from my perspective, was flawed. Because systemic things were put into place where people you met didn't have to do anything, it was already there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of sort of like a car, you just get in and you drive it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no, the system was flawed. I mean, in terms of, in the area of practicing law, of course, I did land transfers, and you saw restricted covenants that blacks couldn't buy in a certain area and whites couldn't buy in a certain area to build houses, but the only way a white could get in that area was commerce, a store, or such. I mean, this is in Orlando. I'm sure the same thing happened here.
So yeah, through your private practice, you really wanted to help to evolve the system and make some changes into the system.
Absolutely, that was my basic motivation. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like how do you transition from being an attorney into being a judge? Like, what was that something you wanted, or how did that happen?
How did that happen? Well, I never thought I'd be a judge because of my positions on things. You know, I was not a conservative, never have been, still not a conservative. Because my view was, what am I trying to conserve? Racism, inequality? No, that's not my view of conserving. And the system systemically was set up. Did I want to preserve that? No, I didn't, because that was antithetical to black people. But I had the respect of the people that I came in contact with. They might not have liked me, but they respected me. And it's better to be respected than liked, because it's always better to like somebody you respect. The reverse is the truth. So after years of, and I started the voting league in Seminole County also, it became political. So the political side said they were accustomed to having their way, and my idea was to change that. And I did. They didn't like it. They had to be accountable to the community. So when I didn't apply for one, but when one came open, somebody suggested to me, they said, no, anybody but Perry. So that was like in the 80s. So in 1990, I was approached. I said, Jim, you're a natural, by a mover and shaker who was part of the group, said, anybody but Perry. He said, it's 1990, it's time. And so applied, and didn't get through the Judicial Nominating Committee. Got 4 votes, I needed 5. Me and another guy got 4 votes. So they voted, they could have sent 6 names up, but they voted 5-4 to send 3 and 5-4 not to send me. So then next time it opened, and they said, Jim, apply. Okay. Same thing happened. So finally, in 99, I said, it's time. I said, look, man, why are you wasting my time? You know, I hadn't planned to apply. I didn't know anybody on the nominating commission. And my brother just died that November. And this was like the end of November or December. So I didn't know who was, I didn't care. I said, but I'll apply. All I have to do is change the date on the application. It's the same, and send it in. And I got 7 votes. I said, well, I said, no way they'd send me up. Jeb Bush was the governor. I said, no way he's gonna appoint me. His father appointed Clarence Thomas.
He did?
And he appointed me. So that's how it began.
And that made you the first black judge from Seminole County, is that right?
First black circuit judge in the circuit, Seminole and Brevard County.
Okay. And what was that like? Were you well received once you were on the bench?
Well, they told me that the first year they ostracized me. I said, you should have told me that, because I'm used to being by myself anyway. And the year after that, He approached me and said, Jim, I want you to run for chief judge. I said, why me? I said, people have been on 5, 15 years, love to be chief judge. My ego doesn't require that. I said, you're the only one we all trust. I said, well, now you didn't understand, I'm not gonna be a titular head or a lapdog. I said, well, we understand that. We understand that we might not agree with your decision, but we know that whatever your decision might be, it won't be personal or political. I said, okay, I can promise you that.
They knew you were a man of your word, and you were just going to try to do the right thing.
Well, my thing was to do the right thing, period. It wasn't political, it wasn't because of personality. It's either right or it's wrong. So then I approached the incumbent chief who did not plan to run again. He was from Brevard County. See, there hadn't been a chief judge in Seminole County in 13 years. So they were really using me to, so I understood that. So I asked the incumbent chief, he said, well, I said, what is it that the chief does? Oh, don't worry about it. He said, the heir apparent is already chosen. I said, well, I wasn't really asking your permission. I said, I talked with the heir apparent, and he said he would support me. He said, well, we'll see about that. So he went and talked to the heir apparent. The heir apparent said, I'm supporting Jim. So he said, well, I'm gonna run again. I said, okay, fine. That's what you want to do. Had I known you were gonna run, I wouldn't have put my hat in. But since you announced you weren't, we'll see who's gonna win. Because there was a slight difference in judges in the New Hercules. It was like 23 in Seminole County and 26, 27 in Brevard. So they always had the majority rule. So they decided to come over and talk to my county court judges and ask them, make promises to them if they would back in. So they called me down and said, he promised this, what he promised. I said, I didn't promise Jeb Bush anything, and I promised you. So you asked me to run. I said, I don't think I can promise you without being fair, but I'm not promising you anything else. So prior to the message got back over to him, he said, did Jim talk with the county court judges? He said, what did he tell them? Probably he promised. He said, well, actually, I said, I'm not promising them a damn thing. That's what I told him.
And then, fast forwarding 10 years or so, then you were nominated for the Supreme Court. How do you rise to the Supreme Court, the highest state and the highest court in the state? How did that happen?
Well, I never applied for anything. I was always asked to apply. So I was at a meeting, a judicial meeting, conference in Jacksonville. And we had this dinner, and I was sitting with the judges from my circuit. I always make it a point when I go to these conventions to sit at different tables every day. So I was pretty much known throughout the state. I wasn't running, but that's just who I am. I figured I could learn from other people and bring it back to my circuit, and they could learn from me and vice versa. So I was sitting at this table, and they sent a person over and said, these justices and appellate judges want you to join their table. It's okay. So I went over, sat at the table, and they said, tell us about yourself. So I did. Told them the story I told you pretty much. They said, well, we want you to apply to the Supreme Court. I said, I'm not interested in serving on the Supreme Court. I've just been reelected without opposition in Seminole County. So my office sits on 08. And I said, I don't want to go to Tyler. I said, what do you have against Tyler House? I said, nothing. I said, plus, I'm a Magic season ticket holder. So they said, well, it's really not about you. I said, you're right. It's about serving. So I applied, and I was one of the 4 names that were sent up to the governor. And he picked me.
Amazing.
I didn't know the governor. I didn't know Bush, or I've been a lifelong Democrat. Okay, so they're Republican. Didn't know him. The county commissioners here are white Democrat, Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I get a call from Zenbao. Said we want your permission to name this court annex after you.
Mm-hmm.
I said I'd be honored. I said, by the way, have you talked to my doctor or something? He said, no. I said, these are normally relegated for people who are dead or dying. And I didn't know at the time I had fourth stage prostate cancer that went to my lymph node.
Okay.
Didn't know that after the ceremony, etc. But that was prophetic.
It's great to be honored while you know.
Oh yeah, while you're living.
Yeah. I try to wrap this up here, but I do want to ask you. You know, you've seen so much, and you marched with Dr. King. You've seen all the progress that has been made. You know, you being one of the people that kind of have helped to break through some of those things. Where do you think we are today as a country? How far have we come versus how far do we have to go?
Well, you know, historically, if you watch the continuum, it's up, down, now we're down.
Yeah.
But it's not just in terms of black people. I'm concerned about whether democracy can survive, because things that are happening now, and it's controlled by fear. And in order to have a democracy, a democratic republic, you cannot be swayed by fear. A judge cannot make his decision based on fear or favor. That's not happening. The legislators are operating on fear. I'm sure they see what's happening. They're not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look in, and I'm a student of history, okay, not just American, Florida, worldwide history. You see the same semblances of dictatorship and oligarchy happening right here now.
Mm-hmm.
When 1% of the people control 80% of the wealth,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones who make the, and the legislators don't make decisions. The lobbyists are paid by this 1% to promulgate what the law is.
Mm-hmm.
And the law is to maintain the status quo to give them an advantage at the detriment of not just blacks, but poor whites also.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the poor whites thinking that the problem are these black people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the problem.
Pit 'em against each other. You know, there are some today, you know, we've seen a lot of things happening where DEI efforts are being terminated.
Kind of race history, yeah.
You know, affirmative actions being ended. And some people would put forward that you yourself are proof that it's no longer necessary. Look, if you can raise from nothing, what would you say to folks that kind of try to suggest that those kind of are no longer?
The system is set up to let a few out to give hope to the rest of the people. But whether I would happen again, maybe one or two of us would get out. But it's not set up for that. And these things were set up by the government. The government is controlled by that 1%. I was one hedge fund guy offered Charlie Crist $1 million not to appoint me. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Okay. And he said, if you appoint Perry to the Supreme Court, he was running for the Senate at the time, we'll give the money to Rubio. That's how Rubio got his kickstart.
Wow.
It's in my book.
Talk about your book. I'll let you close with that.
Well, my book is, people always told me, you need to write a book. And I said, well, you know, it's not an ego thing, but I figure I'll write this for my kids and etc. And they told me that my book might inspire other people. And I try to be an inspiration, a role model, and a mentor to hundreds of people, some known, a lot unknown. So it was finally finished. Took 9 years to finish it. Started stopping cancer, pandemic, 2 cancers, matter of fact, and cancer free now.
That's great.
So
And it's available on Amazon. People.
Oh, it's available on Amazon and the Florida Historical Society. Florida Historical Society did the printing
Okay.
and the publication. But I've had an interesting life. I had no idea that I would get to where I am and have the influence that I've had on people and places. But I try to, whenever I'm in an integrated situation, and I let them know that I'm not a titular head, I'm a team player, but I will not compromise my integrity or hurt my people.
Hmm.
And I let them know going in, this is who I am, you might not want me. So I don't try to fool anybody.
Yeah. Well, Justice Perry, it's been my pleasure to sit down with you. I could talk to you for another multiple hours here, but we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everything that you've done for the community, for the state. True pioneer here.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.